A wealthy man offers a job to a woman in need, thinking he's simply performing a good deed. As she settles into his household, unexpected connections from her past begin to surface, leading to revelations that challenge his perceptions and change both their lives forever. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. The annual San Francisco Charity Gala buzzed with activity inside the opulent Palace Hotel. Jack Thompson adjusted his perfectly tailored Armani suit as he made his way through the crowd of Silicon Valley's elite. At 42, his salt and pepper hair and sharp features had earned him a spot on several most eligible bachelor lists, though he paid little attention to such publicity. His focus remained on his tech empire, valued at $8.2 billion, and his philanthropic endeavors. "Jack, the foundation's numbers are impressive this quarter," Sarah Mitchell, his PR director, said as she approached with a tablet displaying charts. "But we need something more personal. The public sees you as distant." Jack nodded absently, his attention drawn to the large windows overlooking the street. Below, a woman in worn clothes sat on the sidewalk, sketching with a broken piece of charcoal on discarded cardboard. Even from this distance, he could see the detailed precision of her work. 3 blocks away, Maya Johnson huddled in the doorway of an abandoned storefront, her fingers blackened from the charcoal she'd found. At 35, her face showed the wear of 4 years on the streets, but her eyes remained sharp and observant. She captured the bustling city life on her makeshift canvas, each stroke precise despite her trembling hands in the cold. A passing businessman threw a few coins near her feet without stopping. Maya didn't pause her drawing to collect them. Her mind wandered to her former life: art school scholarships, promising gallery showings, then the series of misfortunes that led to her current situation. She carefully folded the finished sketch into her worn backpack, adding it to her collection of similar works. 2 days later, Jack visited the Harbor Light Shelter as part of his foundation's community outreach program. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the worn linoleum floors. He walked past rows of metal bunk beds, noting the careful organization despite limited resources. "We're at capacity most nights," the shelter director explained, leading Jack through the common area. "But we try to provide more than just beds. We have job training programs, counseling." Jack stopped abruptly. On the wall hung a striking charcoal drawing of the city skyline, capturing both its grandeur and its shadows. It was the same style he'd seen from his window at the gala. "Who did this?" he asked. "Maya. She's been staying with us on and off. Talented, but struggling to find stability." Jack found Maya in the shelter's small library, surrounded by art books borrowed from the public library. She sat straight back despite her circumstances, dignity evident in her posture. Her clothes were clean but worn, her hair neat but using minimal products. "Ms. Johnson," Jack said, extending his hand. "I'm Jack Thompson. I saw your work on the wall." Maya stood, her handshake firm despite her obvious wariness. "Emere Thompson, I recognize you from the news. I have a proposition for you," Jack said, getting straight to the point. "I need someone to help manage my household staff, and I believe you have the intelligence and attention to detail required. The position includes room and board at my residence." Maya's expression remained carefully neutral. "Why me? There must be hundreds of qualified applicants." "Because I recognize potential," Jack replied, "and because everyone deserves a chance to rebuild." The shelter director watched their interaction with poorly concealed interest. Maya studied Jack's face, looking for signs of deception or ulterior motives. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow, if you're willing. My driver can pick you up at 9. As Jack left the shelter, he felt satisfied with his decision. A good deed done, a life potentially changed. He didn't realize then how this simple act of charity would ultimately transform both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Maya watched him leave, her hand clutching the strap of her worn backpack. Tomorrow represented more than just a job. It was a chance to step back into the world she'd lost. Whether that step would lead to salvation or further complications remained to be seen. The black Mercedes pulled up to Jack Thompson's mansion precisely at 9 a.m. Maya clutched her small duffel bag, containing everything she owned, as she stepped through the wrought iron gates. The mansion sprawled across 3 acres in Pacific Heights, its limestone facade gleaming in the morning sun. For stories of architectural perfection loomed before her, a stark contrast to the shelter's cramped quarters. James Wheeler, the head butler, met her at the door. His pressed uniform and rigid posture immediately set the tone. "Ms. Johnson, welcome to the Thompson residence," he said, his tone professional but cool. "Please follow me." The marble foyer opened into a grand entrance hall with a sweeping staircase. Maya's worn sneakers seemed to whisper accusations against the polished floor. Original artwork hung on every wall. She recognized pieces worth millions, including a small Monet that made her fingers itch to touch its textured surface. "The staff quarters are this way," James announced, leading her down a separate hallway. "You'll be sharing the east wing with Mrs. Garcia, the cook, and Ms. Peterson, the laundress. Mr. Thompson has arranged a private room for you." The room, while modest compared to the mansion's grandeur, was larger than any space Maya had occupied in years. A queen-sized bed with crisp sheets, a wooden dresser, and a small desk occupied the space. The attached bathroom gleamed with new fixtures. "Staff breakfast is at 6 a.m. You'll receive your daily duties list at that time," James continued. "Mr. Thompson expects all employees to maintain appropriate professional standards." His gaze lingered on Maya's worn clothing. "A uniform will be provided," he added, opening a closet to reveal several sets of black pants and white blouses. "Ms. Peterson will assist with alterations if needed." Maya nodded, maintaining her composure despite the underlying tension. As James left, she heard whispers from the hallway. "Another one of his charity cases," a voice muttered. "Remember that ex-convict he hired last year? Lasted 2 weeks. At least this one's clean," another voice responded. "But did you see her bag? Everything she owns fits in there." Maya unpacked methodically, arranging her few possessions with care. 3 pairs of pants for shirts, worn but meticulously maintained. A small sketchbook and her precious collection of charcoal stubs, wrapped in tissue paper. A photograph of her mother, creased but preserved in a plastic sleeve. While organizing the room, she discovered a wooden box pushed to the back of the closet. Inside lay a set of expensive oil paints, brushes, and canvas boards, all untouched. The dates on the tubes indicated they were at least 5 years old. Maya's hands trembled as she closed the box, memories of art school flooding back. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Garcia, a woman in her 50s with stern features, stood at the door. "Mr. Thompson requests your presence in his study to discuss your duties." The study occupied the mansion's west wing, its walls lined with leather-bound books. Jack sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents on a laptop. "Maya, please sit." He gestured to a leather chair. "I trust the accommodations are satisfactory?" "Yes, thank you," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "Good. Your primary responsibilities will include overseeing the household schedule, coordinating with staff, and managing event preparations. James will train you on specific protocols." Jack paused, studying her. "I understand this is a significant change. Take time to adjust, but remember, this is an opportunity for a fresh start." Maya nodded, recognizing both the chance and the challenge presented. As she left the study, she caught her reflection in a hallway mirror. The woman staring back wore the same face, but seemed to exist in a different reality, one where second chances came wrapped in privilege and weighted expectations. The rest of the day passed in a blur of introductions and instructions. By evening, Maya sat on her new bed, processing the dramatic shift in her circumstances. The found box of art supplies weighed on her mind, a tangible reminder of dreams once abandoned. Outside her window, San Francisco's lights twinkled like distant promises, both tempting and terrifying in their possibility. On her 3rd week at the mansion, Maya's routine was interrupted by an unexpected impulse. While cleaning the kitchen's back wall, a vast expanse of plain white, she noticed a set of cleaning supplies that included charcoal-based scrubbers. The familiar material triggered something in her. Without fully processing her actions, Maya began creating subtle shadows on the wall. The charcoal moved naturally under her fingers, transforming the sterile surface into a canvas. Hours passed unnoticed as she worked, the kitchen's ordinary objects taking on new life in her mural. The copper pots became warm focal points. The window frame transformed into an architectural study of light and shadow. "What are you doing?" Jack's voice cut through her concentration. Maya froze, the charcoal scrubber still pressed against the wall. She hadn't heard him enter. Jack stood in the doorway, still wearing his business suit, his expression unreadable. "I apologize, Mr. Thompson. I'll clean it immediately," Maya said, reaching for a sponge. "Wait." Jack approached the wall, studying the detailed work. "This isn't vandalism. This is..." He traced the air above one of the shadows she created. "This is remarkable." Rather than anger, his face showed genuine interest. He turned to Maya, who still stood rigid, expecting punishment. "You didn't mention you were an artist." "It wasn't relevant to the position," Maya replied carefully. Jack's next word surprised her. "There's an exhibition opening at the De Young Museum tomorrow evening. I'm attending as a patron. Would you be interested in accompanying me?" The invitation caught Maya off guard. "As staff?" she asked. "As my guest," Jack clarified. "Someone who clearly understands art should experience it properly, not through magazine pages or computer screens." The following evening, Maya found herself standing in the museum's modern wing, wearing a borrowed black dress from the household's collection of event wear. The dress fit well enough, though she felt conscious of every movement. Groups of well-dressed patrons moved through the gallery, their conversations a mix of artistic critique and social gossip. Maya recognized several pieces she'd studied in art school, work she'd never expected to see in person. "What do you think of the new Anderson installation?" a curator asked Jack, gesturing toward a large abstract piece. Before Jack could respond, Maya spoke. "The artist's use of negative space creates an interesting dialogue with the viewer's expectations. It reminds me of Rothko's later works, but with a more contemporary understanding of spatial relationships." The curator blinked, surprised. Jack watched Maya with increasing interest as she continued her analysis, demonstrating knowledge that went far beyond casual appreciation. Throughout the evening, Maya found herself drawn into more conversations about technique, art history, and current trends in the gallery world. Her previous nervousness faded as she discussed subjects she'd vetted, but forced herself to forget. Jack observed these interactions with growing fascination. The woman who had been quietly managing his household schedule was now confidently debating artistic movements with some of the city's most prominent collectors. Later, as they rode back to the mansion, Jack broke the comfortable silence. "You've studied art formally." It wasn't a question, but Maya answered anyway. "Yes, I had a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute." "What happened?" Maya turned to look out the window, watching the city lights blur past. "Life happened. Sometimes dreams have to be set aside for survival." Jack didn't push further, but his mind was working. The next morning, he made several phone calls to his contacts in the art world. The kitchen wall mural remained untouched, and a new set of professional art supplies appeared in Maya's room without explanation. The dynamic between them had shifted. Jack began seeking Maya's opinion on potential art acquisitions. She found herself spending more time in his study, discussing artists and movements, sharing perspectives that challenge his traditional views of value and meaning in art. What neither of them acknowledged was how these conversations were slowly erasing the carefully maintained lines between employer and employee, between privilege and poverty, between their separate worlds. The mansion's peaceful routine shattered one Tuesday afternoon when Clara Martinez showed up at the service entrance. Maya recognized her friend's sharp knock. 3 quick raps followed by 2 slow ones, their old signal from the streets. "Girl, look at you," Clara exclaimed, taking in Maya's pressed uniform. "Playing Cinderella in this castle?" Her leather jacket was worn, but designer, likely lifted from a donation bin. Her dark hair was styled expertly despite her homeless status, a skill from her former life as a hairdresser. Maya glanced nervously toward the main house. "Clara, what are you doing here? Can I check on my best friend? Remember who kept you alive your first winter on the streets?" Clara pushed past Maya into the staff kitchen. "Nice digs. Very Martha Stewart meets Downton Abbey." The kitchen's sterile cleanliness contrasted sharply with Clara's street-weathered appearance. She ran a finger along the marble countertop, leaving a deliberate smudge. Missing any of it? The freedom? No rules, no fancy rich people watching every move you make. Maya wiped the smudge away automatically. Freedom to what? Freeze? Starve? Freedom to be real, Clara countered. Remember that night at the abandoned gallery? When we broke in and created our own exhibition? Your street art was raw, honest. This place, she gestured around the kitchen. It's suffocating you. Memories flooded back. The thrill of creating guerrilla art installations in forgotten spaces, the camaraderie of their small street community, the unfiltered authenticity of survival. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she straightened an already perfect row of spices. There's a new spot under the bridge, Clara continued. Artists, musicians, real people. Tonight's going to be epic. Come with me, just for a few hours. Remember who you really are. Jack's voice cut through the tension. Maya, I needed to discuss the upcoming. He stopped short, taking in the scene. Clara's smile turned predatory. Mr. Thompson, thanks for taking such good care of our Maya. She was always too talented for the streets. Clara, Maya warned. What? I'm paying a compliment. Clara's eyes never left Jack. Though I wonder if you know what kind of talent you really have here. The things this woman can create with just spray paint and anger. Jack maintained his professional demeanor, but Maya saw the slight tightening around his eyes. Maya's talents are evident in her work here. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have business to discuss. Of course, Clara drawled. Business. She headed toward the door, but paused beside Maya. Tanig, HT, 11 p.m. You know where. Don't forget who you are, artist. After Clara left, silence filled the kitchen. Jack studied Maya, who couldn't meet his eyes. She's an old friend, Maya offered finally. I see. Jack's tone was neutral. Maya, your personal life is your own, but I hope you understand that certain associations could jeopardize your position here. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Clara helped me survive when no one else would. And now? Jack asked quietly. What kind of help is she offering? Maya had no answer. That night, she lay awake in her comfortable bed, Clara's words echoing in her mind. At 10:55 p.m., she changed in her old street clothes, kept hidden at the bottom of her drawer. At 10:59 p.m., she sat on the edge of her bed, torn between two worlds. At 11 p.m., she heard the distant sound of police sirens and imagined Clara's underground art gathering being discovered. She stayed in her room, but sleep eluded her. The memory of Clara's knowing smile haunted her thoughts, along with the realization that Jack's careful acceptance of her might have just shown its first crack. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya retreated into herself. Her work remained impeccable, schedules managed, staff coordinated, household running smoothly, but she moved through the mansion like a ghost. The kitchen wall mural remained unfinished, the new art supplies untouched. Jack noticed the change. Maya's usual thoughtful contributions during their art discussions had become monosyllabic responses. When he acquired a new Basquiat piece, her critique was polite but distant, lacking her usual passionate insight. The annual Thompson Foundation benefit is in 3 weeks, Jack announced during their morning meeting. Rather than their usual setting in his study, Maya had arranged to meet in the formal dining room, maintaining a careful physical distance between them. I've already begun the preparations, Maya replied, checking her tablet. The catering is confirmed, the guest list. I want you to be the featured artist. Maya's tablet clattered to the table. Excuse me? The benefits theme is hidden talents, hidden voices. Local artists who've overcome adversity. Jack leaned forward. Your work deserves to be seen. My work isn't ready for that level of exposure. The mural in the kitchen suggests otherwise. As do your sketches. Yes, James mentioned finding them while cleaning. Jack's expression softened. You're talented, Maya. Why are you hiding from that? Maya stood abruptly. I'm not hiding. I am surviving. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I stand, you've been surviving at the expense of living ever since Clara's visit. The mention of Clara's name hit a nerve. You don't understand what it's like, Maya said, her professional demeanor cracking. To have nothing, to depend on people who she stopped herself. Who what? Jack pressed. Who see you as a project. A chance to prove their own generosity. The words came out bitter, surprising them both. Jack was silent for a long moment. Is that what you think this is? Some sort of philanthropic experiment? Before Maya could respond, his phone buzzed. Another crisis at the company needed his attention. Think about the benefit, he said, heading for the door. The choice is yours, but don't let fear of what others might think stop you from reclaiming your voice. Left alone, Maya wandered the mansion's halls, eventually finding herself in the gallery wing. Her reflection fractured across multiple gilt-framed mirrors. The uniformed housekeeper, the street artist, the law scholarship student, all versions of herself she couldn't seem to reconcile. The benefit preparations continued around her. Maya threw herself into the logistics, orchestrating details with mechanical precision. But at night, she found herself sneaking into the kitchen, adding small details to the mural. Each addition felt like a confession. Scenes from her life on the streets hidden in shadows, moments of beauty she discovered in unexpected places. One evening, she arrived at the kitchen to find an easel set up, canvas ready, professional lights positioned perfectly. A note in Jack's handwriting read simply, "Your story deserves to be told. Your way." Maya stared at the blank canvas for hours. Finally, her hand reached for a brush. The painting that emerged was neither pretty nor polite. It showed the city at its most raw and beautiful. Mansions and shelters, gardens and garbage, desperation and hope, all interconnected. When Jack found her the next morning, still working, clothes spattered with paint, he said nothing. He simply stood in the doorway, watching her create with an intensity that had been missing for weeks. "I'll do it," Maya said without turning around. "The benefit. But I'm not painting pretty pictures of redemption." "I wouldn't expect you to," Jack replied. Truth rarely fits in gilded frames. The statement hung between them, acknowledging something neither was ready to name. That her presence in his house had become more than an act of charity, and that facing her past might require both of them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. The Thompson mansion transformed for the benefit. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the grand ballroom, where San Francisco's elite gathered in designer evening wear. Behind a partition, Maya's hands shook as she adjusted her black evening gown, borrowed again, but this time selected with care by Jack himself. 5 minutes until the reveal, James announced, his usual stoic demeanor showing a hint of concern for Maya's obvious nervousness. Maya's exhibition space dominated the ballroom's east wall. 3 large canvases remained covered, the culmination of 3 weeks of intense work. The centerpiece, her largest work, stood nearly 8 feet tall. Jack approached, looking sharp in a tailored tuxedo. "Ready?" "No," Maya admitted. "But do I have a choice?" "Always," he replied softly. "But I hope you'll choose to be brave." The lights dimmed. Jack took the small stage, commanding immediate attention from the crowd. Tonight's theme is Hidden Talents, Hidden Voices. We often walk past extraordinary talent every day, blind to the stories and gifts that exist beyond our comfortable bubbles. I'm honored to present an artist who has challenged my own perceptions. Please welcome Maya Johnson. The crowd applauded politely. Maya stepped forward, her throat dry. The covers were pulled away from her paintings, and a collective gasp filled the room. The first canvas showed the reality of street life. Not the sanitized version, but the raw truth. Hands reaching for warmth, faces marked by both desperation and dignity. The second depicted the invisible barriers between social classes, illustrated through architectural elements that morphed from prison bars to mansion gates. But it was the central piece that drew the strongest reaction. It showed 2 worlds colliding. The opulent mansion merged with street scenes, each bleeding into the other. In the center, 2 figures stood, one in wealthy attire, one in worn clothes, their faces reflecting the same human essence. The room fell silent. Then the whispers began. "Extraordinary, but so confrontational. Is that supposed to be?" A harsh laugh cut through the murmurs. Clara stood at the ballroom entrance, wearing a shoplifted cocktail dress like armor. Now this is the Maya I know. Tell them, girl. Tell them who you really are. Maya froze. Jack stepped forward, but Clara was faster. You all want to know about talent? Maya here was the star of the underground art scene. Her street pieces sold for thousands to collectors who never knew they were buying work from a homeless woman. But that's not even the best part. Is it, Maya? Clara, stop. Maya pleaded. She's not just some charity case your beloved Mr. Thompson rescued. She's enough. Jack's voice cracked like a whip. Security moved Tawa. RD Clara, but the damage was done. The crowd buzzed with speculation and judgment. Maya felt the room spinning. The carefully constructed facade of her new life cracked under the weight of exposed truths. She looked at Jack, expecting to see disappointment or anger, but his expression showed something worse, hurt. Without a word, Maya fled the ballroom. Behind her, she heard Jack calling her name, but she didn't stop. She ran past her room, past the kitchen with its unfinished mural, out into the garden where she'd once felt safe. The night air hit her face, carrying the distant sounds of the city. Her city, in all its brutal, beautiful complexity. She heard footsteps behind her, but couldn't face them. Not yet. Not when everything she'd built was crumbling because she'd tried to exist in two worlds at once. The benefit continued inside, her art standing witness to truths now too exposed to ignore. And somewhere in between the mansion's wealth and the street's reality, Maya's carefully constructed new identity lay shattered, waiting to be either rebuilt or abandoned. 3 days after the benefit, Maya sat in her small room at the Harbor Light shelter, back where she started. The worn mattress felt foreign after months of luxury linens. Her resignation letter to Jack had been brief. I appreciate the opportunity, but it's best if I leave. Her phone, kept from her previous life at the mansion, buzzed constantly with Jack's calls. She ignored them all. The shelter staff welcomed her back without questions, though their eyes held concern. Maya, Linda, the shelter coordinator, knocked on her door frame. You have a visitor. Maya expected Clara, coming to either apologize or drag her further into chaos. Instead, Jack's PR director, Sarah Mitchell, stood in the doorway, looking out of place in her designer suit. Maya, we need to talk, Sarah said, closing the door. You've created quite a situation. I'm not doing any press statements or damage control, Maya replied firmly. I'm done being part of the Thompson narrative. Sarah's expression softened unexpectedly. This isn't about PR. It's about Jack. He's not handling this well. He's a billionaire. I'm sure he'll manage. You don't understand. The board is questioning his judgment. Your paintings at the benefit, they're being interpreted as a criticism of wealth inequality. Some major investors are threatening to pull out. Maya felt a stab of guilt. That wasn't my intention. No, Sarah agreed. Your intention was truth. But truth has consequences. She paused. Jack hasn't been to the office since you left. He sits in front of your kitchen mural for hours. The image hit Maya hard. She turned away, fighting unexpected tears. His family's calling constantly, Sarah continued. They're concerned about his relationship with the help. His sister suggested he needs professional help for his savior complex. There was no relationship, Maya protested weakly. Sarah's laugh was gentle, but knowing. Maya, I've worked with Jack for 8 years. I've never seen him look at art, or anyone, the way he looks at you. After Sarah left, Maya walked the shelter's halls restlessly. Other residents nodded in greeting, respecting her obvious distress. In the common room, the TV played a local news segment about the benefit. Controversial art exhibition at billionaire Jack Thompson's home raises questions about class and privilege, the reporter announced. Sources say the artist, a former employee, has disappeared. Maya switched off the TV. Her phone buzzed again, Jack's 27th call of the day. This time, a text followed. The kitchen feels empty without you. The art world feels empty without your voice. My life feels empty without our conversations. Please, just talk to me. She started typing responses, deleting each one. I don't belong in your world. Your reputation can't handle my reality. I'm not a project you can fix. Finally, she turned off the phone and pulled OU. Her sketchbook. The blank page stared back, awaiting her truth. Hours passed as she drew compulsively. Jack's study, the kitchen mural, the moment their worlds collided. That evening, Clara appeared. Her usual bravado was gone. "I messed up," she admitted. "I was jealous. You were becoming someone new, someone who didn't need me." "I would have always needed my friend," Maya replied quietly. "But you couldn't let me change." Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. "For what it's worth, those paintings, they were incredible. You showed both worlds without judgment. I'm the one who brought judgment into it." After Clara left, Maya stood at the shelter's window, watching the city lights flicker on. Somewhere out there, Jack was sitting in his kitchen, staring at her unfinished mural. The thought of him there, surrounded by wealth but feeling empty, made her question everything she thought she knew about belonging and worth. Her phone sat dark on the bed, holding 27 attempts at connection. The distance between the shelter and the mansion had never felt greater. Yet somehow, they'd never been more connected through the raw honesty of art and emotion. At the shelter's common room, Maya found Clara unusually subdued, clutching a worn manila envelope. The television murmured in the background, showing footage of Jack entering his corporate building, looking haggard and distracted. "I need to tell you something," Clara said, her voice uncharacteristically serious. "Something I should have told you years ago, when you first ended up on the streets." Maya sat across from her friend, noting how Clara's hands trembled. "What is it? Remember when you first told me about your family's art gallery? The one that burned down?" Clara pulled documents from the envelope. "I knew more than I let on. I worked as a cleaning lady there before everything." Maya's body tensed. The gallery fire had been the beginning of her downfall. The insurance claim denied, her mother's death shortly after from stress-induced heart failure, the spiral into homelessness. "The fire wasn't an accident," Clara continued. "I overheard conversations. Someone wanted that property. Your mother refused to sell. She spread out old newspaper clippings on the table. I kept these all these years, out of guilt maybe." Maya's hands shook as she read the headlines. Historic gallery fire raises questions. Property developer denies involvement in art gallery investigation. "Why didn't you tell me?" Maya's voice cracked. "Because the developer threatened everyone who worked there. And later I was ashamed. I watched you struggle on the streets, knowing I had information that might have helped." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Then you found a way out with Thompson, and I got scared you'd discover the truth." Jack's voice suddenly filled the room. "Maya, if you're watching this..." They both turned to the TV, where Jack stood at a press conference podium. "Turn it up," Maya demanded. "My recent investigation into the Johnson Gallery fire has revealed disturbing information," Jack continued on screen. "Corporate corruption that destroyed not just a building, but lives. I'm announcing my foundation's commitment to uncovering the truth and making amends." Clara grabbed Maya's arm. "He's been investigating? Since you showed up at the benefit," a new voice said. They turned to find Sarah Mitchell standing in the doorway. "He's been working nonstop, connecting dots, following paper trails. The developer who wanted your family's property? He's on Jack's company's board." Maya felt the room spin. "That's why you came to find me." Sarah nodded. "Jack needed you to know, but he wanted proof first. The developer has been using the company's real estate division for years to acquire properties through questionable means. Your family's gallery was just one example." "I should have told you sooner," Clara whispered. "Maybe things would be different." Maya stood abrupt. Memories flooding back. Her mother's determined face as she refused to sell, the mysterious threats, the night of the fire. "I need to see Jack." "He's waiting," Sarah said simply, holding up her car keys. As they drove through the city, Maya watched the familiar streets blur past. The truth had been there all along, hidden in Clara's guilt and corporate paperwork. Her friend's attempts to keep her away from Jack suddenly made more sense. Fear of the past coming to light, fear of losing her only real connection to her street family. The Thompson Corp building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the setting sun. Inside, Jack waited with years of hidden truth and a chance to finally understand why her life had shattered all those years ago. Maya touched her throat, feeling the weight of words unsaid. She'd run from the mansion thinking she was protecting herself from more loss. Instead, she might have been running from the very answers she'd spent years searching for in her art. The elevator climbed toward Jack's office, carrying her toward a confrontation with the past that would either heal old wounds or create new ones. Either way, there would be no more hiding in the shadows of half-truths and assumptions. In Jack's office on the 45th floor, Maya faced a wall covered in documents, photographs, and connected strings, a detective board worthy of a crime film. At its center, a photo of her mother standing proudly in front of the Johnson Gallery. "I should have recognized you sooner," Jack said, his voice tired. He hadn't shaved in days, his usual polished appearance replaced by something more raw. Elizabeth Johnson's daughter. The gallery was legendary in the art world. Maya approached the wall slowly. "You knew my mother?" "Of her. Everyone did. She had an eye for discovering talent others overlooked." Jack pointed to various documents. "When Clara mentioned your past at the benefit, something clicked. I remembered the gallery's mysterious fire, the sudden disappearance of the Johnson family from the art scene." "Robert Chun," Maya read from one document. "The developer? My company's board member. He's been using Thompson Corp's resources to pressure property owners for years." Jack ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Including threatening your mother." Maya's fingers traced her mother's photograph. "She refused to sell until the day she died." "Because the gallery wasn't just a building," Jack said softly. "It was your family's legacy, a platform for underrepresented artists." He hesitated. "Like you're becoming." A new document caught Maya's attention. A bank statement showing regular payments from a shell company to Clara's account. Clara was paid off to keep quiet about what she overheard. But she did something they didn't expect. She found you on the streets and stayed close. Protected you in her own way. Maya sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "All these years, I thought I'd lost everything because of bad luck. Random tragedy. Chen's being investigated by the SEC now. His associates are turning on him." Jack knelt beside her chair. "Maya, I'm so sorry. My company, my board, we were inadvertently part of what happened to your family." "You didn't know," Maya whispered. "But I should have looked closer, asked better questions." He touched her hand tentatively. "When you came to work for me, you weren't just another person needing help. You were finding your way back to the art world that was stolen from you." A knock interrupted them. Sarah entered with more files. "Chen's asking for a deal. He's willing to confess about the gallery fire in exchange for immunity on other charges." Maya stood abruptly. "No deals. My mother died because of their actions. The truth needs to come out." "It will," Jack promised. "But there's more." He pulled out another document, a trust fund statement. "Your mother had a secret account. Money from gallery sales set aside for you. Chen's people never found it." Maya stared at the numbers. Enough to restart her life, to open her own gallery even. "Why show me this now?" "Because you need to know you have choices," Jack said. "You can walk away from all of this, the mansion, the investigation, me. Start fresh somewhere else. Or stay. Help me make this right. Use your art and your story to expose the truth." He gestured to her benefit paintings, now hanging in his office. "You've already started." Maya looked at her mother's photograph again, remembering her words. Art tells the truth when nothing else can. The pieces of her past were finally falling into place, revealing a picture far more complex than she'd imagined. "Clara needs to testify," she said finally, "about everything she knew." "Already arranged," Sarah confirmed. "She's meeting with our lawyers tomorrow." Maya turned to Jack, really seeing him for the first time in days. The worry lines around his eyes, the determination in his posture, the way he looked at her not with pity, but with understanding. "I need time," she said, "to process all of this." Jack nodded. "Take all the time you need." "But Maya?" He touched the kitchen mural photograph on his wall. "Whatever you decide, know that your art, your voice matters. It always has." Maya left the office as sunset painted the city gold. The truth about her past had finally emerged from the shadows, bringing with it not just answers, but new questions about her future. Everything had changed, yet somehow she felt more herself than ever before. The De Young Museum's Grand Hall buzzed with anticipation. 1 year after the Thompson benefit, Maya stood before a different audience. This time, she wasn't hiding. "Ladies and gentlemen," the museum director announced, "we present Bridges Between Worlds by Maya Johnson, featuring the recovered works from the original Johnson Gallery collection." The exhibition space told multiple stories. One wing displayed salvaged pieces from her mother's gallery, restored after being discovered in Chen's private storage. Another showed Maya's street art, carefully preserved by underground collectors. The central hall hosted her new works, massive canvases that chronicled her journey from privilege to poverty and back again. Jack stood quietly at the back, letting Maya have her moment. Their relationship had evolved over the past year, transforming into something neither of them had expected. After the Chen investigation, they'd worked together to establish the Johnson Thompson Arts Initiative, supporting artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. "Your mother would be proud," Clara said, approaching Maya. She looked different now, clean, professional, wearing a gallery assistant badge. After her testimony had helped convict Chen, she'd found her own path to redemption through working at the exhibition. Maya squeezed her friend's hand. "She would be proud of both of us." The centerpiece of the exhibition drew the most attention, a massive triptych that combined all of Maya's styles. The left panel showed the Johnson Gallery in its prime, the right depicted life on the streets, and the center panel revealed the Thompson Mansion's kitchen mural, finally completed. "Ms. Johnson," a reporter called out, "your story has captured national attention. How does it feel to reclaim your family's legacy?" Maya considered her answer carefully. Legacy isn't just about reclaiming the past. It's about building bridges to the future. She gestured to her artwork. "These pieces aren't just about my journey. They're about all the invisible barriers we create in society and how art can help us see each other more clearly." Later that evening, as the crowd thinned, Jack finally approached. "The kitchen feels empty without its mural," he said with a slight smile. "Well," Maya replied, "I might know an artist who's willing to create a new one, for the right price. The mansion's yours too now, you know that." He touched her hand gently. "If you want it to be." Maya looked around. ND the exhibition, at Clara directing gallery assistants, at Sarah handling press inquiries, at the mixing of social worlds she'd once thought incompatible. "I think I'm done choosing between worlds," she said. "Maybe it's time to create our own." The final piece in the exhibition, unveiled last, showed two figures standing in a doorway between shadow and light. One wore a suit, the other wore jeans, but their hands were clasped, bridging the gap between their worlds. Below it, a simple plaque read, "Some doors open both ways." Jack read the title and smiled. "Ready to go home?" Maya took his hand, feeling the weight of her mother's restored legacy, Clara's friendship, and her own hard-won truth. "Yes," she said, "I think I finally am." As they left the museum, Maya glimpsed her reflection in the glass doors, not fragmented anymore, but whole. She was no longer the homeless artist or the wealthy man's project. She was simply Maya Johnson, telling her story through art, building bridges between worlds that needed to understand each other. The city lights sparkled around them, and somewhere in the distance, a new artist was creating beauty in unexpected places, waiting to be discovered. The end.